Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Oh, yes. Good morning. Don't we love this morning? Isn't it gotten cold? Los Angeles is beginning to feel
a lot
the
like
winter.
Christmas.
It's feeling just a little bit like Christmas.
Yes. Good morning.
Oh, good. It is actually. It's not a bad morning at all. I think, as we get closer to Christmas, I know you've got an event coming up. I know we've just been talking about it on our Periscope, and you got some stuff to say about that. I think you should do.
Well, first of all, Periscope is fascinating. It's amazing that you have that kind of connectivity, and I thought that was actually a really good tool this morning. Not just because I shamelessly jumped on board with my own agenda, which I want to thank you for. I will say this, you know probably better than anyone the amount of time, dedication, energy that you put into your charity work. And you know that if you were to balance out, you don't collect a salary, neither do I, but if you were, it could probably balance out to $3 an hour with the time you put in. And so you have a certain level of wisdom and appreciation for charitable events. And I thought that was very gracious that you let me get on and plug something I'm passionate about. You've been to social services with me. You've seen the hardships. We were both standing at an almost completely empty food bank one day with Aaron Fitzgerald when you were gracious enough to drop some donations off. And, it's kind of the cause that we have has kind of made me a broken person, which in many ways I leave shattered and inspired simultaneously. We bus in Polar Express style about 400 to 500 children from Social Services San Fernando Valley, LSS Community Care, Bridge to Home, Penny Lane, the Shelter for Domestic Violence for Christmas. This year it's December 5th. And the campaign's just not going well. I think people are, quite frankly, overtaxed with things, overtaxed with life. Overtaxed by me because I try to do some stuff for Halloween for the kids, and quite frankly, I've put some heavy artillery into this cause, and I think at times people just feel like they've heard from enough. So it was very gracious of you to let me talk to your fans, a new audience, about what we do, in hopes that someone might reach out and support us. You can go to GoFundMe/A Combat Radio Xmas 5. Because this is the 5th year we've done Christmas for these kids and get involved, and any amount would be very much appreciative because the event, like I said, the campaign is not going well. Everyone's preoccupied with other things and their own troubles, and quite frankly, maybe they should be. But for what I'm trying to do, I appreciate your support. You've been very gracious, and thank you for that.
Listen, anything I can do, I think, it's important to sort of share the love, if you like. I mean, that's part of what Peace Fund is about, sharing, different initiatives that different people are doing. Same thing as Facebook does it. I think it's important to do that because you're right. It is tough to raise money for things. And when people hear it over and over again, you have to try and be inventive in how you present things. And I think that's one of the challenges that I think every single nonprofit has, is how do you keep people engaged for the things that you are doing. And I think you have to be inventive. And that's, we have our new site coming up, and we've got a lot of really cool different ways to have fun but raise money at the same time. And I think that's the other thing, rather than just giving donations away. Yeah,
it's hard. It's challenging, and it is every bit as creative as the entertainment business we're a part of, to keep people inspired. And the best inspiration, I think you'd agree with this, which is why you're just so dedicated to all the causes. And the brilliant stuff with the respirator and Teachers Without Borders is, what people don't understand is it's the simple gesture of getting involved that changes you from a sideline spectator to being passionate about it. The moment you're in it, an X factor happens that cannot be explained, cannot be described, but immediately happens. It's like becoming a parent. As soon as it happens, then you understand what we're about, why we do this. I mean, we volunteer to do this show. Nothing comes easy. I mean, from the show to everything to poker tournaments at Microsoft and the countless man hours that goes into all that nobody sees. The reason we do it is because we were involved with something that made us immediately passionate for the human race and the act of kindness. And that's what I would encourage people. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you're doing or what I'm doing, although I hope it would be to some extent right now because we're all desperate. But if you find that act of charitable kindness and commit it, then you will become part of the humanity's solution versus part of humanity's problem.
Yeah, I agree totally with what you're saying, dude. I think it's...
you have to do it. You have to do it to kind of walk away and be like, hey.
And you said something a second ago, which I think is very important for anything and anybody. There has to be a passion in what you do. And some people don't have the same passion as you in certain things. That's why there are so many different charities out there. Some good, some bad. Some people have it for different reasons. But I think the key thing is, and we find that with our heroes of the week, the reason why they're successful in what they do is because they have a passion in it and they push it forward. Yet that doesn't mean you don't need help. Like you said, you keep doing things. You've got to have help somewhere along the line. Because eventually people get tired of hearing the same old thing.
Yeah, it is. You have to be creative. I mean, no one who's ever done our Christmas event, to use an example I'm very familiar with, and walked away saying, I'm not going to do this again. Everyone's walked away going, I can't wait till next year. How do we make it bigger? How do we do more? How do we make it better? And that comes from exactly that, because they get involved and boom, it becomes huge. It becomes part of their life. It becomes part of their makeup. Because something happens, and I think you'll agree, that we cannot necessarily describe or explain to people.
Yeah, that is true.
You know, the act of actually giving, passing that kindness along, giving something in sincerity to someone who needs the hand up is something that says, we should do this all day. We should do this 10 times a day. We should, and then you quickly become that addict, as we've talked about. We've talked about addiction on the show. You quickly become that guy who makes it like, you know what we should do tonight? We should do this. And it becomes a charitable agenda that dominates first 10%, then 30%, then 60% of your time. And then we're all kind of a nightmare to have around at cocktail parties because it all becomes about, hey, we're going to do this thing. And you try. I mean, they don't call me Staff Sergeant Barnes because I'm so passive. Unfortunately, that's not that moniker is not meant as a compliment. It's meant because I can get very driven about some things to the point of being psychotic, where, you know, we have to do this, we have to be a part of this, we have to try to solve these problems. And I do believe, as you preach on this show, that solving it is within humanity's scope of accomplishment. We can do it.
It is. I mean, listen, we have... I was talking to some young people the other day, some friends of friends, and I said, you know, world hunger could quite easily be stopped if we rethought how our industry works. If we reduce the amount of meat we had, the amount of grain that is produced to actually feed the meat that we eat could actually solve some of the world's hunger. We actually have a call coming in right now. Let's put this call through here because I'd like to hear what people have to say. Hello, you're on Peace Farm Radio with Adrian Paul. Who's this? Hello? Oh, maybe they just got scared.
Maybe. The Highlander may have scared them. But we are in position to take calls.
We are in position to take calls.
We'll do it. You want the number?
Yeah, put the number up there. While Ethan's doing that, today is Veterans Day.
Yes.
Everybody...
Wait, I don't know what that is.
Somebody's calling us. It's Veterans Day today. Did you know Veterans Day actually started in November 1919 when President Wilson proclaimed November 11th as the first commemoration of Armistice Day with the following words: to us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with the solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service and with the gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of the nations. So, to all of you out there who are celebrating Veterans Day today, you know, my respect and my admiration for those people that have served their country goes out to you. I hope you... For me, it was a great day because there was no traffic on the roads. I don't know why, but
there was no traffic.
But I don't think that's what Veterans Day is all about. But
are you a veteran?
No,
neither am I.
I'm not a veteran.
I don't think we can imagine it, but I think we have very much respect for it.
No, I have respect for it because, you know, I've been in some situations where, you know, and just to imagine that being a constant in, day out, I just don't know how, you know, you would go through that.
One of the reasons I was asking is, doesn't England have conscription?
Yes. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay.
Italy has conscription, for instance, but England does not. So there are some, you know, a lot of the Israeli in Israel, it is conscription. I mean, you have to. There are certain countries that do allow it and still take on the fact that you know, they're young between a certain amount of time, have to actually conscript in the army for, you know, a period for a couple of years, for instance. So you know, I'm glad. My mother said you'd never do well in the army. I said, why not? She said, because you don't like people telling you what to do.
That's right. You're like the Krays. Remember that in the movie The Krays, where the Krays aren't actually role models or weren't role models, but they get conscripted into the army at one point, and they just walk out, and the drill sergeant starts yelling at them, "Where are you guys going?" And they just walk away and join the British Mafia. But
exactly. Where are you going?
Which some people would say is worse than the military. I don't know. It depends on your point of view, I guess. But yeah.
Well, listen, we're going to get back to what our focus of the show is today because, the focus, obviously, we talked last week about values we teach our children, starting with respect and compassion. And teaching our kids cultural diversity and tolerance actually fits in with that. And I think this is something I always have. You ever have those images that you sit there and you watch? Such as, I remember it was years ago I saw this, and it was part of the Middle East conflict back then. We're talking about, when Gaza and all this was going on, and which is still going on. But I saw this father holding his child up with a gun in his hand and raised the kid's gun hand, and I just thought, wow, this is what we're teaching our children, and it's sad that we have to do that. And I think, we create boundaries. I mean, most of the boundaries we create ourselves are based on ignorance and people saying, you're different than me. I'm basically going to be against you and I hate you because I don't understand you and I don't know who you are. So cultural diversity and tolerance is what America is basically made up of. Yeah. This, we're talking about hundreds of different cultures in this country. From Poles to Irish to Spanish to Muslim to whatever, Hawaiian, everywhere from the country. This is what this country is made up of. And I think we have to understand that that's part of what we should be teaching elsewhere rather than some other doctrine which actually lives in, money-making schemes.
Right. I think, it's important, as you do, as I try to do in my household, to appreciate how special some of these different cultures and people actually are and what they actually bring and enhance your life with.
Right.
I think it's important to remember that, there's something very special to the Mexican population, the Native American population, the Hawaiian population, and they do bring a lot of magic
Correct.
to life.
Correct.
And I think the differences should actually be celebrated because, quite frankly, nothing's worse than a lot of people who look and sound just like me in a room. So, I think we should be...
I'll attest to that.
Yes, you will attest to it. And I think that you should definitely, we should embrace the fact that, the Hawaiians have their culture and the Alaskans have their culture, or the Inuits, I think it's all wonderful.
The other thing I think is, because obviously our kids are growing up in a world that's becoming increasingly small. I mean, you've got to have cultural understanding because I always did when I've been to many countries, and whenever I worked in them, I would try and learn the language because I wanted to understand not only what people were saying because they were saying things behind my back, but because,
they shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, they would. But, the thing is, you want to understand what their idea and what their culture is all about. It doesn't mean you agree with it, but you have to understand it to sort of get an idea of who these people are. We've got increasing mobility now and technology, and which is, we're far more likely to come in contact with people from different cultural backgrounds than our grandparents were.
Right.
I mean, think about it. I still know some of my parents. They basically turn around and they've never left the country. But with the internet and television and everything else now, those borders are being broken down. And as a result, it's important to be mindful of other cultures. I think children have to learn how to interact in a constructive manner because, that's the issue.
Look, I think you've done a great job talking about this. If I can just interject, you go into Chinatown and it's wonderful. The food's great, the shops are great, the people are great. You don't honestly think you're going to become China because these people have their space in California,
right,
do you?
Exactly, yeah.
It's just one of those things where just remember they bring the positive things that you like, and it's great.
The one problem I have, and this is what's happening with Europe, and people will probably fault me for saying this, is that if somebody walked into my house and basically tore down the structure and said it was terrible and I should leave and I should go somewhere else because it's not what they think it should be,
right.
I don't agree with that type of mindset. And I think this is what's happening in Europe right now with an influx of a lot of the immigrants. They're basically trying to bring their culture and enforce it and change the way the European cultures, England, France, Germany, etc., have existed for such a long time. And I think that's an issue I have a problem with.
I think personally, if I was to move to France, my sister, it's a known fact, is basically a Spanish citizen. She lives in Segovia, married a Spaniard who's great, and they've lived there for over a decade. And, I think in our family, if you're going to do that, you should learn to speak Spanish.
Right.
You should learn what the customs are, and you should be respectful of those. Now, if you want, within the four walls of your apartment, per se, practice your Christianity or whatever your religion may be, then you have the right to do that. She had a Halloween party, for example, and no one in Spain really got what that was. But within respectful bounds, you have to remember you're going into you're going into their backyard.
Well, I want to touch something you just said now. I think is important because children don't come with preconceived notions of other cultures and other people. They come with open minds. That's what they're born like. We have to. How do we teach these children to appreciate that difference? It starts with us.
Right.
It has to, because children listen to what we say, and as well as watch what we do. I mean, I know my kids turn around sometimes. They're looking at me and they'll say something. I'm like, "Where did you get that from?" They say, "You said it."
Yeah.
And I might have said it 3 weeks ago or a month ago, but they've learned that from us.
I consider it respectful that you try to learn the language and social habits. You don't have to give up your own, but you should make an attempt to bridge the gap and the difference by learning theirs if you're going to live there, is my feeling.
Right.
I'm not saying a good friend of mine is Pakistani. He's Muslim. He's a brilliant, kind person. And when you go to his house, you're the guest of his house.
Right.
You get the best chair, and his wife brings you whatever you want to eat, and they are the most hospitable people. Outside of their house, they do everything they can be to be Americans. They speak English. They still are Muslims, which you have freedom of religion in this country.
Right.
But they speak English. Their kids go to their schools. They're part of the PTO. They donate to the causes. They embrace things. They don't have a "how dare you celebrate Christmas" mentality.
Well, but that's the issue I have. I have the issue of actually trying to change the mentality once you go into somebody else's country. I wouldn't go into Mexico and say, "Well, you guys should stop speaking Spanish because English is the best language in the world." You can't do that. Why would I do that? And I've heard that before. England used to do that. For God, you go into Spain and they're like, "Well, what are you speaking Spanish for?" We speaking. A lot of English mentality was very much closed because they never went anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing happens. Let's just take, for example, how we teach our kids an example. You'll have one parent telling their children not to judge people by their color or by their race or their religion.
Right.
That family might live in a majority, let's say, a Caucasian community where the other children have, and have a very limited interaction with a different culture.
Right.
However, when you have a children, telling their friends, or you hear that person has her children hearing her children tell her friends, I'm getting mixed up, that these people are people that work for her because they're so lazy and they and they should do their job, and if you are bad-mouthing people in that respect, your children are going to do exactly the same thing. If we teach our children to make decisions that are not based on stereotypes, then we have to do the same thing too.
Exactly. Look, we would not go to Swaziland, so to speak, and convert the Zulu into our way of life. We would understand we were in their neighborhood, and we would respect them.
Well, I mean,
it should be unilateral.
You said something a second ago, which I think is very important as well, is the fact that, it's not the culture that is against you. It's the person in the culture. If somebody's lazy, it's not because a Latino or an African American or anybody else is lazy. That's because of what they are is lazy. It's because the person's lazy. Right. It's that particular person. And every single culture in this world has bad people in it, has lazy people in it, has obstinate people in it. It's simple. That's really what it's about. And I think that's, we have to understand that when we're teaching our kids.
Right. And we do understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, it's one thing. You have your own beliefs, and it's okay to discuss those beliefs. But I don't think you should make it your mission in life to travel and make sure everyone is bent to your will.
I remember when I went years ago, I was doing a film in the Philippines. And
I've heard some of these stories.
We'll leave those ones away. But I was in the film in the Philippines, and all the actors were American or English American. And I started eating I was eating the Filipino food, and they were eating hamburgers and everything else. And they looked at me and said, "Aren't you afraid to eat that. I said, no, I'm not afraid of it. I mean, this is what they eat all the time. Why should they be afraid of it? But there may be some different bugs in it that are not, what I'm used to, because that's what happens sometimes. Your system does not grab these types of viruses that are in that system, but they eat that food. And I was eating it, and it was really good. And they turned around and me said, can I just try that for a second? So I tried it. But 3 days later, I'm watching all these people eating the same food. Yeah. So the point is that by example of showing our kids or anybody else that it's okay to try and learn about a different culture, eat the type of food, the spicy foods or what they eat, it might not be what you use, but maybe you might like it. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was the same way. My mother, when she came over from Italy, my grandfather said, I don't eat garlic. Don't put anything in garlic in it because I don't eat it. So the roast beef at the time, that was the English staple diet, basically came very plain, very whatever, and that's what he was used to. Well, one day, and when she made it elsewhere, she was putting garlic in the food and she put garlic in the meat, and she forgot. She was like, oh, my God. So she served it anyway, and he turned around and he said, you know what, that was the best. What did you do with that food? That was the best one you've ever made. Mm. So the point is, our ignorance a lot of the time is based on the fact that we don't want to accept something else. We already preconceive what it is, and I think we shouldn't be blind to that difference.
You're absolutely right. I'm trying to think. I had American food once this week. I had Mexican food twice, Chinese once, and I went to a Korean place. Oh, we got a call. You want me to take it? You want me to try it?
Yeah, let's hear a caller. Let's see what we have.
It's the Filipino consulate calling to talk to you about the. Hello. Okay, I think we got.
Oh, you have to call.
Hello. Good morning. Hello. You're on Peace Farm Radio. Who's this? Hello. Are you there?
They hung up again. I have a feeling that is.
What? I think we were listening to you, whoever you were that just called. We've had 2 calls this morning.
Yeah,
and we're having a little bit of a jump on here.
Yeah, I'm not. I think that's.
Well, let's just talk about it again. We were just talking about, as parents, we must help our kids appreciate and learn about differences, not to pretend that they do not exist.
Right.
The question is not whether differences exist; they do. It's what message we are sending by teaching children to be blind to differences. Unless we as parents are willing to help explain to children what seems strange or different to them, we will never be successful in teaching children to understand and appreciate differences. Avoid political correctness. Parents who teach children to be politically correct when interacting with differences are making the situation worse. Rather than teaching children the correct labels or names for people, let's teach them that differences are only a part of who we are. I think that's a very big thing. And kids are aware of differences at a very, very young age.
Okay, we're going to try this again. We got another call from a different phone number, so here we go.
Let's try this one. Hello, good morning. You're on Peace Farm Radio.
Hi, Adrian. This is Jody.
Hello, Jody. How are you?
I'm doing a lot better than I was the other night when I was messaging with Ethan and you.
What can we help you with this morning, Jody?
Well, you were talking about all the different cultures.
Jody. Hello, Jody. How are you?
Yes. What about the different cultures, Jody?
One of the things that I love about New York, let me get my computer away from me so I don't confuse myself, is that they have neighborhoods, and each you'll have like an Irish neighborhood.
Right.
And everyone knows where their neighborhood is.
Right.
And it just, they're all New Yorkers, but they have their culture in their hood, and they have their celebrations and their holidays and everything, and if, they'll invite people from other, say, the Italian neighborhood next door to come over and join in.
Well, I think,
and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think that should be done. I think it's a great idea to figure out how somebody else's culture works.
And one of the hardest things that I have ever seen, you were talking about how we teach our children. when in college, I rode with the local police department accident investigation. The first accident was in a black neighborhood, not a ghetto, but housing.
Right, it was in a housing estate, yeah.
Housing section.
Right.
And the two cars hit headlight to headlight on the center line.
Right.
Each driver had like 50 people on each side of the road, and they wanted us to tell them who was at fault.
So what's the point, Jody?
They were ready to go to war.
Right, because somebody...
On the way in to this area where the cops wouldn't go in alone. That's the type of area it was.
Right.
And the tragedy on the way in, you were talking about how we showed children by example. There was a small boy, and he smiled and waved at the black and white that I was in, and then he got this sort of confused look on his face, and his wave turned into a pistol hand.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the problem. The problem is that what you have their parents and that teaching them. It's exactly the same thing as I said earlier in the show, where you actually have the fathers or the parents or the friends or the family teaching them something that they might not understand. For them, first of all, they wave and then they turn it into a pistol hand because somebody's taught them that. They didn't know that. They didn't come out the womb looking like that.
The gangs were teaching them that. We had one girl in that area that dedicated herself to studying and getting out, but that wasn't the culture of that neighborhood. The culture of that neighborhood was, I hate to say it, but a welfare culture.
Well, you know what, Jody, I think you're absolutely right on this. We're going to take another call in a second, but thank you for calling in. I think I agree with you. We have to teach our children. There are many neighborhoods around the United States and around the world that are segregated, and I think the whole point of the discussion is also to teach our children how to accept different cultural and accept the differences that we have, and not teach them that we are separate and that we should do something violent to solve that issue.
Right. So, I have a black neighbor now, but none of us interact.
Well, I think you should go over there and
go over there and say hello.
We should go and say hello to him.
I have, and
good, because let me tell you something. Differences don't just exist in a Caucasian culture. They exist in all different cultures, and I think every culture has to be understanding that.
We've got Saudi Arabians, Turians, but we're all mixed in together.
Well, Jody, thank you for calling us and letting us know. We will keep listening to the show and keep bringing us these updates. Thank you very much. So I think it's interesting. We got there's a point of view, different cultural. It does. You do have neighborhoods that are fighting each other because they've grown up accepting that one type of culture is different than another.
Economics, too, in that story in particular, play a part in it, which is why I'm in favor of working with others to eliminate, those sort of obstacles. People do need a chance to make a living. They do need a chance to provide fairly, and that was part of that story.
Let's talk about a word that's used very rampantly these days, which is tolerance. It's one of the most used words of this strange new century, I would say it was, and it's often misused as more of a form of control than actual acceptance. It's called social engineering. It's not true tolerance. Tolerance is a love for all of God's creations. That's really simple. To be colorblind, to practice understanding for those different than yourself. The world today is full of open borders and worldwide communication. We can't hide in those little conclaves like we did it once before. You only heard about starving children in China when you were little. Your child can talk to different kids all over the world on the internet now and find out about it firsthand. So learning to recognize common ground can be uniting, but learning to recognize and accept differences can be just as endearing. Tolerance is not just a buzzword exploited by the media in today's society, but it's a core social value of America. And I think this is something, and yet we just had our caller talk about, there are divides in one area where the police are afraid to go in. I know one of the biggest drug issues in this country, one of the most dangerous places, is just outside Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So where you cannot go in, they just let them go at each other. But that has a whole different social, and you're right, economic issue that has to be dealt with.
Nobody, I don't think anybody grows up and wants to become a drug dealer. I think that's very rare.
Well, as I said,
it's, what you were hinting to, I believe, is that situations drive you to that in most cases.
Yes, right. Let's talk a little bit about John Beerley. John, are you there this morning? I would imagine.
Yes. Good morning, guys. How are you this morning?
A very interesting topic this morning that we've brought to light. What do you have for us? I know that you've. What's your point of view on this?
My point of view is, I think Ethan said it best. Just diversity brings magic to everyday life.
Hold on, John. We got another caller. Let's just see what the other caller has to say.
Let's see what this one's about.
Hello. Good morning. You're on Peace Farm Radio. Who's this? Hello.
Oh, that's interesting. They hung up.
They hung up
today.
People want to hung up. Okay, John, go ahead. What were you saying?
John's intimidating them.
That's what it was, John.
That's right. I think Ethan said it best about how culture and diversity are the magic of life, and if you can understand and celebrate what those differences are, it's. I don't think there's no better way to understand someone else's point of view than to come at it from that angle.
Hold on, John. We got the call back again. Hello, you're on Peace Farm Radio. Who's this?
Well, it's your Southpaw again. However, basically, I volunteer a lot, and I noticed that if you want to help cultures out, you need to start at a younger age. You need to start taking your kids to volunteer for holidays. Don't just spend the money on your holiday or your Christmas presents, but give your kids something to understand and take, old toys or old presents to shelters, to homeless people. There's a study right now that was on Twitter that Canadians, instead of giving their kids, a ton of toys at Christmas, they tell their children, well, you've got 10 packages under the tree. So therefore, I'd like you to go pick out 10 or 15 toys that you don't play with. And we're going to take them to the shelter. We're going to pass them out. Or it's Thanksgiving. We're not going to eat it at home. We're going to go, and I'm going to show you all of these different people that have no place to eat.
I think that's a great idea. There is also a study out that also, and I was talking it behind the scenes. I've not spoken to Ethan about this before. That in some respects, social services is actually detrimental because you're allowing people to accept something without having to work for it. When you give somebody something,
it keeps you stuck.
Well, it does. It keeps you stuck in that position because you're accepting something. Well, at first you're reticent to actually accept it because of your pride or some other reason. Then you accept it. Then the next time you go because you need it. And the third time you go because you accept it. So sometimes people get stuck in that situation. That's why the Peace Fund's Helping Hands initiative, our goal is to actually help people in certain situations. But the fact of the Helping Hands thing is that we want the people who are receiving the gift to also go out there and raise money or work for it, so that it's not just a give out, but it's a helping hand up. And I think that's something very important for people to understand.
And that's exactly what I've done for about 12 years. They offered all kinds of different things, after I lost the use of my arm, which I have mostly back now. But the thing is if you don't say no, then your kids see you grow up on it. And they're the ones that stay, and they're the ones that see it, and they're the ones that pass it on. And all you're doing is creating generations and generations of lazy people who don't want to work.
I agree.
Your kids should be doing chores. You don't need to pay them. They live here. Why? See, this is where I have a problem with some of my youth groups. I refuse to pay my kids an allowance. I will give them what they need. They can do extra things to earn some money. They lived here. It's their dirt. It's their dishes, and it's their food. So they need to pitch in just as much as the next person. When you start giving that stuff to the kids for free, and they're making more money than you are, or at least they have more money than you do in their bank account because they don't spend theirs, they spend yours, you're just creating another cycle. And it may not be welfare, but you're creating another cycle. They're just getting a handout.
Southpaw, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for calling us. I'll take the point. We're going to go at. Thank you very much. And keep calling in and keep listening.
Back to John Beerley.
So, John, I think that's another good point. John, you were making one just before we had our caller.
Well, actually, yes. I actually want to bring in our hero of the week right now. She's on deck and has done a lot of work in this area. Her name is Daniella Cohen. If you go to Daniella's website at danielacohen.co, you'll see that she describes herself as a sister, a change maker, and a speaker who is passionate about spreading education, empathy, and cultural understanding. Now, one of the ways Daniella does this is through her G.I.V.E project, which stands for Go, Innovate, Volunteer, Educate. You can find it at gogiveproject.com. And Daniella will be coming on in just a moment to share a little bit more about what she does and how she does it.
Yeah, give me a moment here.
Okay, so while we're doing that, I actually want to give a shout out to a couple of organizations that are making a difference. The humanityproject.com to create, their idea is to create an innovative arts-based programs that help youth solve pressing social problems through collaborative efforts that emphasize the value of each individual. The second one I'd like to do is Generation On, www.kidscare.org. They are to inspire, equip, and mobilize youth to take action that changes the world and themselves through service. And we talked about, actually, our caller talked about, let your kids to go out there and do something physical. That's what a lot of our heroes do, John, is that they go out there and they physically do it themselves. They don't just sit at home and receive. And I think that's very important to understand. We're just about to go now live, and we have Daniela. Daniela, are you on?
Hello.
Daniela, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Highland Park, Illinois. It's a suburb just outside of Chicago.
Very nice. I might be going to Chicago at some point. I might do a sword experience there at some. So how old are you?
I'm 17 years old, so I'm a senior in high school.
All right. So can you take us back to the time when you started and how G.I.V.E began?
Yeah, definitely. So the story of G.I.V.E started when it was co-founded in 2008, but G.I.V.E was inspired by something that happened when I was in third grade, and I called it Peace Buddies. So when I was in third grade, my elementary school gave my class a chance to get funding for ideas that would make the world a better place. And we all know that third graders have crazy ideas, and as a third grader, I was very ambitious. I thought I could end war. And I didn't really understand war in third grade. All I knew was that if we were at war with someone, we aren't friends. So in my third grade mind, all you had to do to solve war was just become friends with people who were at war. So we started by writing letters to a school in Iraq, and we also wrote letters to a school in Israel. But we never got responses. And it was really my teachers and my friends and my family who told me that I shouldn't give up and that letter writing to build friendships was a great idea. So then 2 years later, when I was in fifth grade, my older sister introduced me to her friend named Partha, and his grandparents started a school in Bangalore, India. So in fifth grade, my class wrote letters to that school in Bangalore, India, and the first pen pal exchange was extraordinary, and that is what inspired the creation of G.I.V.E. So looking back, it's really easy to laugh at myself, my third grade self, who thought that letters could end war. And it's crazy to remember that just one letter transformed into an international venture, but it really was just one letter and one friendship with my pen pal that changed my life. And so that's how G.I.V.E started.
You know, I think it's interesting. I see you've been in India twice. How did those trips come about?
Yeah, so the first trip was inspired by my older sister. She was on a gap year in Varanasi, India, and my family went to go visit her in Varanasi, and then I took an extra week and went to Bangalore to go stay at Suma's school. Her school is called Sahasradipika, and I had one of the most meaningful experiences of my entire life at her school, and I went back the following summer. So living with Suma and all of the pen pals that I had been writing to for 6 years, and getting to meet them was a very transformative experience.
Why was it transformative? You said it was one of the most endearing experiences of your life. Well, tell me a little bit more about that.
I think, from my first letter, just being a fifth grader in America, it was very difficult for me to comprehend what it was like to be someone living in a completely different situation. And, just learning about the struggles that students face in India is much different than learning about your friend Suma. So going to actually meet Suma and, meet these people that I had been talking to for so long and learning about was so much different than just learning about the tragedies kids face in India. A lot of the students at Suma's school have been through immense tragedy and are orphans, and meeting someone and connecting with someone really started the process of empathy for me at such a young age. Meeting them in person was just much different than, like I said, it's so much different than just, learning statistics and learning about all the problems in the world, rather than just, learning it from an actual person.
Did you have a preconceived notion of what you were going to expect when you got there and how the people would be?
I didn't really know what to expect. All I knew was what my sister was telling me from her experience on her gap year. And she said India is a very complicated place. There are a lot of contrasts of, vast wealth and depressing poverty, of rich culture and urbanization. So I think I had the preconceived notion that there were a lot of contradictions, but I'm so grateful that I was able to learn so much from such an intricate country, because the more time that I spent there, the more I learned, and just learning about different cultures. There's so much to learn, so much to empathize with, and so much to grow from. So, whatever preconceived notions we have about a country, it's so much different going there and actually meeting people. So that's one of the most important things I think I've learned.
So how does G.I.V.E. work, and what are your goals in the program?
Yeah, so G.I.V.E. has two main goals. Our first goal is to inspire empathy, and our second goal is to enhance the education at our partner schools. So specifically, we do that by hosting letter writing exchanges. We've had thousands of letters written from schools across the United States and Europe, and those letters going to schools in India, Uganda, and Rwanda. We've also donated thousands of flip-flops to schools abroad, and the flip-flops are actually signed with messages of hope, like someone in Tennessee cares about you, or reach for the stars, and really inspirational messages to sort of personalize the experience of, getting shoes for the first time, because a lot of the students don't have shoes. And so our second goal, like I said, is to enhance education, and that's one of our most recent projects, because a lot of the schools that we've connected with do not have access to the internet, and so that is what we have been focusing on most recently.
So do you think technology plays a large part in this?
Yes, technology is becoming more and more central to what G.I.V.E. does. And I think it's really important to stress that, we have two main goals: empathy and enhancing the education, because we could totally get rid of letter writing, but I think there's something very sacred about letter writing and receiving a handwritten note, and that's something that we're going to continue, and I think something that our pen pals are going to continue with. But then on the other hand, technology plays such a critical role in improving the education for the students at our partner schools, because a lot of the schools are underprivileged. They don't have enough teachers. They don't even have enough textbooks. So if a student wants to learn, poetry, or they want to learn about plants, that's not necessarily possible if they don't have access to the internet. I think the internet is something that we take for granted in America. So recently we have been trying to get internet to these schools abroad, and technology has been so central to, connecting the schools abroad and giving them access to things that they would not have otherwise.
Some of the issues about not actually having internet is because there's no power in certain regions, And, we had, and John can talk about this, we had somebody a while back when we were actually talking about books going to Afghanistan, and they didn't have any power in certain regions. And then somebody else had said, well, actually, we've had the same issue in Africa, and there was a technology that actually gave you solar-powered generators that allowed you to get electricity into that area. I think.
Yeah, we had Tatiana Grossman from spreadthewords.us and Adele Taylor from Adele's Literacy Library, who both were basically told you can't bring technology to these schools in India because there's no electricity to support it. And both of these girls said, well, do you have the sun in India? Do you have the sun in Africa? Because we have ideas for solar-powered ways to do that. And they built solar-powered learning centers, solar-powered tablets that were preloaded with lessons and school materials for the kids. It was fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's what we have to look at. There are solutions to a lot of the problems that we always face with ourselves. I've got a couple of other quick questions for you, Daniela. You also recently started a new campaign for emotional health with Born This Way Foundation. How did that partnership come about, and what can you tell us about this campaign?
Yeah, so I am currently on the youth advisory board to the Born This Way Foundation, which is Lady Gaga's foundation, and it was founded upon two key principles: inspiring bravery and promoting kindness. So recently, actually just a few weeks ago, at Yale University, the foundation launched the Emotion Revolution. Basically, the Emotion Revolution's goal was to explode the conversation about emotions, to inspire bravery for young people, because emotional health and mental health are stigmatized right now. And I think it's definitely something that needs to be talked about, especially for students, given that, there are a lot of recent studies, one specifically by the American Association of Psychology, actually came out with a study that for the first time ever, students are more stressed than adults. And that's something that needs to be talked about, being able to deal with your emotions and being able to go to people. So that is what the foundation is centered on. And the Emotion Revolution definitely started that conversation, exploded the conversation about emotions.
Well, Daniela, thank you. I think you're doing a great job. You're this week's Peace Fund Hero of the Week. Congratulations. Keep doing it. And I'm sure we'll hear more about from you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Daniela. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Say another great hero of the week, John, and she's so eloquent too, which
very eloquent. Yes. And I would like to thank Daniela for this was her day off, and she chose to spend it with us talking about these important issues. We really appreciate that a lot. You can find her at Daniela Cohen, COHEN.co for her official website, and you can also find the Give Project at GoGiveProject.com.
Okay, John, do you have any other updates for us? Because we're running out of time yet again.
We are. Very quickly, I would like to send everybody over to Givingtuesday.org. Giving Tuesday is on December 1st. They have a contest going on right now. The submissions are due by November 24th, where you can write an essay about what inspired you to give your time, your money, your advocacy to your favorite nonprofit organization. Awesome. 6 winners will win up to $500 global giving gift cards for themselves, and also $5,000 grants for the nonprofit organizations that were featured in their stories. So I definitely urge everybody to check that out. Write an essay about the Peace Fund, and we would love to win that. Also, you can go to thepeacefund.org to read about all of our other fundraising events going on right now, ways you can support the show, ways you can support Olivia Scheinman, who is our current Peace Fund Radio Helping Hand. Check out Ethan's fundraiser we talked about earlier on the show, gofundme.com/a-combat-radio-xmas5. Help him out. This is a great event. You can follow us all on Twitter, Adrian at AdrianPaul1, Ethan at Combat Radio, and like us and follow us on Facebook and Twitter, The Peace Fund, and at Peace Fund Radio.
And I've got another update for all of you out there. Well, first of all, our website is definitely on the way. We've got all the designs in. Nice. We're in the process of loading everything now. It's going to be really cool. We're going to be able to bring you a lot of stuff. We're going to have a lot more people involved in it. And next week, we're going to launch a new campaign. We actually have we have 100 Microsoft Surfaces that we're going to use for educational programs around the Los Angeles area. We're going to be starting with Kimberly Moore's foundation, Giving Back to the Community, which is, I believe, on November 22nd. We're going to start with a launch there, and then you can win an iPad on Peace Fund Radio. You're going to find out more about that in the coming week or two. So It's a Microsoft Surface that we're going to be giving away, those Microsoft Surfaces, not only to the schools, but you can win one here on the show, and you'll find out more next week on how you're going to be able to do that. So, again, thank you for all of you listening this morning, because I think it's been it's one of those things that it gets away from us, this show. It just keeps going. Thank you, Bev, for bringing us all the information, for all the people that have volunteered, and for all of you that call in. Sorry we have to be short, but we only have a limited amount of time to do things. In closing, Ethan, thank you so much. And your event.
Thank you.
We're going to bring you your event. We're going to get you your event. We're going to make that happen because it's a great event. I've been to it. It's really cool.
I hope so, man. I really do sincerely hope so.
Well, in closing, we're going to close with a quote from Youth Ant. Every human being, of whatever origin, of whatever station, deserves respect. We must each respect others, even as we respect ourselves. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you next week.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.